welcome.
Hi.
Yeah, this is 24-bit actually. So we're basically going to talk about the African tech ecosystem, startup ecosystem. I mean, this is the first time TechCrunch in partnership with Facebook is holding this event in Africa and in Kenya.
Yep.
And I mean, from what I've been reading and also written about the event, we have 15 startups actually that are going to be pitching in this event. So it's actually a very big opportunity for us as an African country, even for African startups. And I read your profile, followed what you do, and you basically have an idea of, you do a lot about startups, write about startups, so you basically have an idea of what African startups are all about. So, I mean, how would you describe the African tech startup ecosystem?
So I think you guys have, it's like a lot of regions outside of San Francisco, basically, and the Bay Area. There's a lot of work to do, and that's not specific to the continent. It's specific to everything outside of this gigantic ecosystem in San Francisco and the Bay Area. And I think there's really interesting stuff happening here. We've met with some amazing people who are building, I would say, solutions very specific to the challenges and opportunities that you have here. And I really like that. I think that that's, if you can make the argument that technology is in everything today, everything is a tech company, then you would say that tech underpins everything. And so to see all of that happening is a very important part of progress, and it's great to see. And I've seen a lot of interesting stuff and some interesting examples also of startups finding money, starting to get the funding and the attention that they deserve. It's going to take a long time, I think, and there are many hurdles ahead, but there's definitely more happening than there was even 5 years ago, is my guess, which is very encouraging.
And speaking of funding, I heard during the morning talk the junior CEO talk about our Africa being at stage 0 in terms of VC funding. Do you think that's the case? And what do you think we need to do more to attract more funding?
I think a couple of things. I think that what Facebook is doing is great because they're bringing more kind of attention, and they're bringing over people from the Valley here along with the event, and that is inevitably going to be a good thing. I think having something like TechCrunch, which is pretty keyed into that scene, is also very good. So I've met with some I guess you could call them local VCs. I met an interesting guy from Lagos last night, for example. So he's not from Kenya, but I am very encouraged again to see the growth of local firms. I would love to see more VCs from outside of the continent start to get more involved and figure out how they can get to know more companies here and get more interested in them. So that's the thing I think needs to happen. More investment from outside of the continent. Yeah.
I mean, I'm sure there are a lot of other investors from within Africa who want to fund startups in Africa.
Yeah.
I mean, why can't we see that happening? Why is it not happening?
You mean, why are you not seeing more investment happening?
Yeah, I mean, more local investors investing in African startups.
I think it's a slow process. So like with any investment, I think that you have to have some proof that it will pay off. And so it would be very cool to see some companies grow and exit. You see more of that kind of trajectory that happens in the startup world. I mean, ideally, it would be amazing to see these companies grow and grow and grow, and then not be acquired, but just continue to grow and really, produce some proper large companies here would be amazing, because I think that's the sort of payoff that investors are always looking for. So until they start to feel more confident that that's going to happen, maybe you will always have a bit of a hesitation to really throw lots of money into this. But to be honest with you, if you go to looking at the Bay Area, it's very, very overcrowded. There's a lot of competition for the most interesting companies. It's hard for startups to get attention. It's just a tight, over-competitive economy there. Also, it's a very expensive place to build a business. So if you think about that being the problem in the most developed place, you then think there's the logic to starting to look elsewhere. From everything I've seen, you've got so many intelligent people here doing great things, filling needs in this direct market, which is massive. It's a great opportunity. So there should be more. Maybe more generally, I think that there's probably more education that can happen with how these things work and how to be able to invest in companies so that the founders know how to go out there and raise money, but to keep control of their vision and their company in the face of that. I do think that, again, that's possibly just a sign of the state of the market, because there are almost like kind of conventions or mores with how funding happens in very established startup markets. And I do think that maybe sometimes in less established places you see more predatory practices and people who are more worried about their investments, so they try to take more of a share of the company as a result. I hope that's where having people who are local investors working more with international investors would be a very useful thing. They can, come up with best practices and work more on these things. I think also there's some pretty interesting international efforts like the big incubators, Y Combinator and Techstars, and it would be very cool to see them, for example, start to do more here, and that would give companies here a more international profile and exposure to a certain class of investors. That would be very interesting for the the economy here.
Okay, and now back to today's event. As I said, it's the first time it's happening in Africa.
Yeah.
And you have 15 startups pitching today.
Yes.
So as TechCrunch, how many applications do you receive for this, and what criteria do you use to reach at 15?
We pull them out of a hat. Mm-hmm. No, I'm just kidding. No, we don't. We go. Yeah. Mm-hmm. No. So it's really hard. Very, very hard, which is actually one of the reasons why we're doing this. Because before, we were just running the Battlefield at Disrupt. And Disrupt has, up to now, it's been in San Francisco, New York, and London. Mm-hmm. That's 3 events. And with this crazy profile, we were getting hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people applying online. We've got an online application process. You upload videos, you do all this stuff. You fill out a kind of questionnaire to give a kind of idea of your company. You submit demos of your product. And as I said, you do videos, and there are video interviews. There are all kinds of things we do, and they involve the editorial staff in them quite a lot to do kind of sifting. It's really hard because, you know what it's like to be a journalist. You have a lot of work already. Exactly. And so they're like, oh, by the way, can you also do this? It was ugh. And it started to feel, as it kind of grew in popularity, it got more and more difficult to try to make educated, you started to feel like you weren't giving as good of an opportunity to as many people as you should be. Mm-hmm. That you're there are probably dozens more companies that would be just as worthy of having the place as another. So this is sort of our effort to try to help fix that problem. We want to decentralize the battlefield. We want to make it more localized so that we can have at least, we're still going to get a lot of applications, but at least it's not quite as many as we got for 3 events. Mm-hmm. If you have more events, the theory is we'll have less people trying to get into each one and more localized. It means that we get a chance to look at more companies and make a better decision. So in terms of the criteria that we're looking at companies that are doing a mix of things. One is not just repeating something that we've seen 1,000 other companies try to do already. So something original, something that's filling a local need. Here it's a wonderful, an amazing opportunity because there's so many things to do. There's so many things to be done. It's sometimes it's the track record of the founder or founders. So if they have experience working at other companies and it's been something impressive that they've done and now they've gone out to do this, you're like, that's notable. If they've got, or if they've, like a guy or a woman who's, has been like a machine learning specialist at a company already, and then they're going off and doing something new in artificial intelligence. you're going to probably that will catch your eye more than if I went out and tried to start an artificial intelligence company. You know, I have no experience in that, so it would look less interesting, less credible. So it's things like that that we look at. We look at, you know, we spend a lot of time on it. We spend time looking at all of those different things, and obviously the application.
How many applications roughly do you guys use?
You asked me that, and I didn't answer it because I don't know the exact number. Sorry.
Okay.
Do you? No. It's 700 startups who have been through the battlefield.
Yes,
No, I don't. I should find out.
Okay.
I'm sorry, I don't know the answer to that.
Yeah, but again, the fact that you get decided to come from Africa means there's so much potential you people saw in Africa.
Yeah.
So just as we wrap up, how would you describe the future of African startup?
I mean, I think that, okay, so on the positive, there are like a million things to solve. And I've been super encouraged. We've been to some developer events here, so we've met various people, not just from Kenya, but from other countries who are here for the event. And it's very encouraging. I feel like the kind of pace of technology and the internet has made the world a lot smaller, you know, as you know. So it's much easier to be able to be tuned in to what's happening in the rest of the world, and that includes currents in the tech industry. So I've been really impressed. I was working with a lot of the startups, helping them, like train them for going on stage in the last couple of days. And I've been really impressed with how, you know, they can come from anywhere and they're kind of just right there with really being up to speed with things, with how things are changing, what the kind of, you know, the dialect of the tech world. They're very keyed into that. Very impressive. So many opportunities and many possibilities. Minuses, money. I think that you guys need more money pumped into these startups. I think more VCs need to be stepping up and doing more, like loads more. And I don't mean just local ones, I mean international ones. I want to see more companies, more VCs coming into this market and willing to take a risk and look at ways that they can get involved, and be less nervous about a loss, because they lose a lot of money anyway. You know, they don't have a great strike rate, VCs. You know, even the best ones are still not, you know, they're prepared to lose a lot of money. So let's see them try to lose some money here. Just kidding. Let's try to see them, you know, put some more money on the line here to see where things go. I would love to see that, because I really feel like it's a massive filter. So if you've got like a massive VC like Andreessen Horowitz, you know, one of these like super fancy Valley VCs, if they started to do a lot more in this region, it would immediately shift focus here in a way that actually would help it a lot. You know, it would make it a very interesting influence here. So I'm starting to see a bit of that. There's a really interesting company called Andela, which is doing two things. One thing is it's a startup that's doing a lot in Africa, and secondly, it's actually working on trying to build the developer community in Africa. So it's like kind of a double level, very important development focused startup. Like, that's kind of awesome, and it would be nice to see more of that, you know. Like, I think that would be a very cool thing. That's one challenge, is the money. The other challenge is, I think you've got infrastructure issues here still, lots of them. So that's why companies like Facebook wade in and do free basics and all of this stuff and try to work with the carriers to offer free services. But, you know, that has its pros and cons. So, like, it would be nice to see a more kind of neutral connectivity that's improving things for everybody, not just for some people. The third thing is, I do feel like there's still a lot to be done with putting some regulations in place to make things more stable. So, for example, there's I met with a very interesting kind of investing startup, and I asked them what their kind of like insurance is for their investors, just in case the banks they work with go bust. And they're like, we don't have one. And that, because it doesn't exist here. And I was like, oh, okay, that's not great. You know, like things like that that's also something that probably keeps VCs away. They just think there's just too many variables where things will just fall apart. So I feel like there's just some infrastructure, things like that still need developing here. So
yeah, there are a lot of steps to be made. And if you compare African startups and what do you think we are doing wrong?
Wrong?
Yeah, if there is.
I don't know. I think that like you guys are having, you have great, I think you're doing a lot right. I would rather focus on that.
Right.
I don't know about wrong. I think that's a wrong way of looking at it. I think that at this point there's like a lot of encouragement that needs to be done, and more trying to kind of create more connections between people, and encouraging more people to be doing more and feel okay, and that there can be it can be financially viable to try to build businesses. I haven't actually, to be honest, maybe I've had a very rose-tinted glasses sort of exposure this week, but and in my kind of history of covering companies here in the past, because I've written about the region before and everything, and met wonderful founders from here, and I don't think there's much I could say is wrong right now. I think, being as inclusive as possible, bringing in, more females maybe into the companies. These are things that are the same for the whole tech industry. So.
Yeah. So now again, Battlefield, yeah? This is the fourth event? You said these three that happened in...
No, we have the Disrupt, which is our big conference, and we've always held it in San Francisco and New York, and in a third place in London. And so that's like our big conference, which has had the Battlefield as part of it. Now we're doing something a little bit different. We're trying to kind of take the Battlefield and create its own kind of event around it. So we're trying to decentralize it and make it something that's more localized. So there are going to be more events. I wouldn't put this on the same level as what's happening in San Francisco, because that's like a 3-day conference with lots of other things going on, which isn't happening here. This is just the Battlefield.
So plans to expand to other continents, Africa?
Yeah, so they're having one in Australia as well, in I think 2 months or so. And I think this has been going really well, and I would not be surprised to see us come back, but we haven't made any announcements about it yet. But I think that it would be super, super cool of us to use this as an opportunity to go to other parts of the continent as well, because I think every time you go to a place, you're bringing some attention to it. And I think that there are multiple regions in across the different countries of Africa that could benefit from that. I think that, even when we were considering, you didn't ask me, but why did we choose Nairobi? Yeah. I don't know if that's one of your questions. It would be one of mine. But it's a good question. But I think that I think we actually had a hard time making up our mind. It was like Nairobi or Uganda or Lagos. Should we go somewhere in Lagos or in Rwanda or South Africa? Or, we had multiple locations Ghana, we were very serious about looking at Ghana. So we were not sure what the best place would be, considering that there are so many other places that it could be. And in the event, people have come here from all over the continent for the competition. We've got people from everywhere, which is awesome. We chose Nairobi partly as a kind of, we have to go somewhere. And we sort of balanced in infrastructure and where we would be able to hold the event and have people kind of coming together for side events. And there's some great things going on here. We've spent time at a place called the Nairobi Garage and the iHub. So we've had sort of secondary events this week. And we have all of that infrastructure in place to do that, and we have the facilities here. All of that contributed, so it's almost like practical stuff that's made it. Also, there is a developer community here, so that's made a big difference. So.
Yeah. So, lastly, after the events today, what next?
What do you mean? What next?
After today's event, what happens to these startups?
They go home and they sleep. They're tired. We've been working them hard. Yeah, no, they are going to sleep. Hopefully, we're going to pick winners who will come to the event in San Francisco and compete there. which is really exciting.
How many are you looking at picking?
Sorry?
How many will you be picking?
I think it's 2.
2, okay.
Yeah. And so it's a very, really, that is almost like the kind of, it's a great prize because that is like crazy, crazy good exposure. You know, we have a lot of investors there. We've had so many successes come through the battlefield that it's become like a very good way of, narrowing down the problem of figuring out who do I invest in. So it's really good for all of those reasons. We are developing connections with these companies. So I've been, saying you have to keep me in mind when your news is coming, get in touch. And so hopefully it will be the beginning of some more regular coverage of startups and kind of stories in the area coming from them. So that's what I'm hoping for.
Right.
Yeah.
I think that's it for now.
Yeah, thank you.